Hello everyone, this video will get us started on the poetry units. So we'll cover 8 and 9 in this video, and I'll do a different video for 10 and 11. So the poetry genre is our next genre that we'll be looking at in the class, and we will work out very similarly to how we did the short stories, where the first unit you'll just have the poems assigned to you, and you'll do a little bit of practice with poetry, and then we'll do a workshop assignment, which I'll show you. It'll look a little bit different, and then you'll have the submission areas for the poems that you'll write. So you're writing 3 poems, just like you wrote 3 short stories. Poetry writing, a lot of students think that writing poems is easier than writing short story because they're shorter, but the reality is that you're probably going to go through a lot more drafts of your poems than you would a short story. So keep in mind that writing a poem can take just as long, even though there are significantly fewer words. Give yourself plenty of time to practice, plenty of time to really think through how you want your poem to look and how you want it to sound. Make sure that you read your poems out loud, because a good part of poetry really is the sound that the words make. And so if you're not reading them out loud, if you're not thinking about how words will sound when they are put next to each other, then you're really only doing half of what you need to do for a poem. So there's a lot of stuff in the module to help you. If you're new to poetry writing, then you give yourself some time to really draft and practice, and make sure that you look at all of the resources. Even if you've written a lot of poems before, I encourage you to look through all of the resources. So I'm just going to show you what we're working with. 8 and 9 are kind of the introduction to poetry, and then the workshop. So we've got the chapter on writing poetry out of the textbook, so I want you to read through that. And then I also have some video resources here that are just like YouTube videos, some interviews with famous poets and that kind of thing. That's just to get you into the poetry genre in general. And then of course the poetry quiz, which is about the chapter itself. And then we have the poetry collection. So I want to show you, you're writing 3 poems. And so each of these 3 poems has different requirements. And the reason why, just like the short stories, the reason why we have specific poem assignments with specific restrictions is because I want you practicing these different techniques related to that style of poetry. So it makes it much easier to assess and evaluate your skills and how your skills grow when we have restrictions on assignments. So in your creative writing journal, of course, you can write poems in any way you want to, but for the collection, for the ones you're turning in for me to assess and the ones you're assessing for your grade, you have these restrictions. So again, just like the short stories, they're listed in this order because this is the order that I feel you will be best served in completing them. However, you can do them in any order. You just will have to skip ahead in order to in the modules in order to submit them. So the mimicry poem is the first poem, and a mimicry poem is an imitation poem. It copies essentially an original. So you'll find a poem and then you'll mimic it. Some students use songs as well, and that's fine. The example I have when I show you the mimicry stuff is a song, and so a parody of a song. And so that's one way of doing it. The mimicry poem is a good one to start with because you're limited to whatever the original looks like. And so you don't have to really create something completely new because you are imitating an original. With an imitation, though, keep in mind that you want to make sure that your topic is new. The free verse poem is one that a lot of students really enjoy because there are no form restrictions in a free verse. You are writing in a style that does not include rhyming or specific line lengths or stanza breaks or anything like that. The fixed form is the one that a lot of students think of when they write poetry, and that is the kind that has a specific line length and a specific rhyme scheme and a specific, number of lines. So this would be something like a ballad or a haiku. That's the fixed form poem assignment. So you can do them in any order. I also have a video here just to help you with writing poems, and I encourage you to watch it. It's just a lecture video that I've created. So those are the 3 assignments that you'll be working on. And so once you've kind of looked over, these are the specifics for the assignments. Once you've looked over the criteria, I encourage you to get started on one of them in Module 8. The other thing that you'll be doing is this Poetry Elements assignment, which is there are 3 things that you'll be practicing, and these are the kind of practice things that I'm just looking to see what you're able to do with them, and so they're a little bit more fun and just get you writing some poems, because that can sometimes be the hardest part about writing poetry, is just sitting down and writing one. And then the other thing that you're doing in this module, because it's Module 8, it's the middle of the semester, this is really important. You're going to do a midterm reflection. So there are 2 reflections, one at the midpoint and one at the end, and this is how I will determine your grade in the class. Part of your grade is the actual assessment of your work, so the self-assessments and the quizzes that you are taking along the way. And the other part of your grade is the reflection. You are giving yourself a grade in the class. So you're providing in the reflection, you're explaining how well you're doing in the class, but it also allows me to have a conversation with you, give you some feedback if you're struggling on anything, that kind of thing. And so this is where at the midpoint you'll assess how you're doing in the class. So that's an important assignment to do, and it's really important to do at the midpoint because that is the point of the assignment. Moving on, we'll look at Module 9, and Module 9 is our workshop module for poetry. And so I've got a few readings here for you, which are just example poems from the book. And then the workshop itself is right here. The workshop I am doing as a discussion board for poetry. With the short stories, I had you guys use the Canvas peer editing tool, which works really great. As long as people actually submit work, and too many of you waited too long to submit, and so I know some of you are still waiting on a student to submit something so that you can provide a response to it. So that was pretty disappointing, which means that I'm going to try something different for the poetry workshop, which is to have you guys put them on a discussion board. It's not as helpful because you can't use those editing tools, those annotation tools, and so you don't get the kind of specific feedback that's better. But with poems, they're a little bit shorter typically, so they're easier to see on a discussion board. So you are going to post 2 of your poems. So by the middle, I guess, of this module, you need to have at least 2 of the 3 poem assignments completed, and then you're going to post them. So you copy and paste the poem straight into the text box. So once you hit reply, then you'll just put your poem right in here. It's better if you copy and paste, because using files means people have to download stuff, and we can't always see everybody's work. So if it's, as long as it's a regular length poem, you can just post it in here. If anyone's writing a long ballad or something, then you may want to upload a file. So you're going to do that, and then you hit post reply. Once you have posted it, then the reply will be where you reply to your fellow students. So you can reply to any student, but you do need to do at least 3 poems. So the first 3 poems that get posted will probably get a lot of feedback on them. In your reply, you need to comment on 5 changes that the student can make, as well as just feedback as a whole for their poem. It needs to be 5 suggestions for changes. So if you have a really short poem, then your suggestions are pretty limited. So just kind of keep that in mind. Make sure that you are looking for poems with no responses first, so that everybody gets feedback who posts, but your reply will be in here. It's not going to be a really long reply, but I am looking to make sure that you are providing some feedback to your peers, because that is a key requirement for the assignment. So if you have questions about that, please make sure that you let me know. And that is the main part of Module 9. Now, just like with the workshop for short stories, the assessment quiz is based on not only did you post your poems, but you also posted the replies. So you can take the self-assessment quiz and score yourself lower until you complete those replies and then go back in and do it again. Or you can just wait and then do the self-assessment quiz later. It's not going to hurt your grade to not do it because there's no score will be in the grading book, but make sure that you do go back and complete that. So this video has been over 8 and 9, which is the start of our poetry unit. If you are struggling at all with anything in the class, be sure to let me know. This is the halfway point. It's a really good time to assess how you're doing in the class and really think about what you want, what kind of grade you want at the end of the semester, and whether or not you're doing the work to deserve that grade.